Oh, don't forget the fan, bro. The fan.
You hear it right now?
Yeah. You hot?
No, that's the central heating that's on.
Oh.
1 second. Um,
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Let's go.
how loud is it?
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not the fan. Last time it was the fan. It's not the fan.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
All
Don't
right.
don't
All
don't
right.
sweat it. Don't sweat it. All right.
It goes
Episode.
it goes on and off. Sorry.
It's okay. All right, we're back with episode 31, a continuation of episode 30, where we're discussing all the managers from the recently concluded FIFA World Cup. And we're discussing teams from A to H. We did A to D. And now we're finishing off from E to H, where we're going to just go through each and every one of the managers. Some teams have changed managers. We're going to discuss the previous manager and the current incoming manager and so on and so forth, man. So how are you feeling today?
Doing okay. Yeah. Pretty rested. Slept well, and we still got more World Cup content to go from the tournament that just wrapped up a couple months ago. And I like the part one of the series. We roasted where we needed to. We gave credit where we needed to, and I want to do it again today.
Indeed, man. Indeed. So, without further ado, let's get into it, and we're gonna continue from Group E, where we had Japan, Spain, Germany, and Costa Rica. One of the most interesting groups of the recently concluded 2022 World Cup, and it's a classic. This group is a classic, and we would discuss this group for a long time. You see what I mean? Because that group, I'm telling you, it was a one of a kind type of group, man. So let's get into the Japanese manager, and that's Hajime Moriyasu. He was appointed in 2018, and he is still in charge. So he got a contract until 2026. So the Japanese Federation, they have obviously put their faith in Moriyasu for another cycle. And I don't blame them. He was under the radar a bit because, Japan did not do well in the last Asian Cup, and they kind of stuttered a bit in qualifiers until they were able to get themselves on their feet. And the World Cup was pretty much a success, if you ask me. What are your thoughts?
I think it was a success, but they all have come away from it knowing that they could have gone a step further and broken that round of 16 barrier. I think him staying on at the helm is earned. Famous victories over powerhouses Germany and Spain in what proved to be a group of death. And I think the way that his in-game management, Moriyasu, in the matches against Spain and Germany when Japan trailed was phenomenal. We saw the adjustments he made, the substitutions in the second half of both matches. I think he deserves enormous credit for that. Overall, you can give some criticism that performance against Costa Rica. They should have won that game, man. How do you beat Spain and Germany and you lose to Costa Rica, a team that registers just one shot inside the box on you all game, and that proved to be a goal? He's been in charge now for, like you said, 5 years? So
Yeah.
he'll be taking them to the Asian Cup. Japan's always going to compete in the Asian Cup. I think he's done enough to remain. So the JFA has put a lot of faith into him. I still kind of feel like Japan will come away from the World Cup feeling that they should have made the last 8. They should have.
Yeah, of course, man. You spoke about his in-game management. I think the in-game management is brilliant, but in terms of team selection, it's a bit suspect because if you have something working for you, like when he was bringing, those players off the bench, players like Ritsu Doan, but then, you see that Ritsu Doan and guys like Osano are like, you know, weapons off the bench. Why are you starting them in the next match? You use that same formula, and if the going gets tough, you have that ace up your sleeve, that plan B. But then when you use up plan A and plan B together from the start, then when the going gets tough, you don't have anything to fall back on. You know what I mean? But it was a commendable World Cup performance, especially against both Germany and Spain. We're looking at the last results right there. 2-1 against Germany, 2-1 against Spain. But then the game against Croatia here, it was a game. If we go back to this game right here, it was a game that Japan should have probably won this game. You see what I mean? Because
They should have done enough to see it through. Yeah.
exactly, because they scored first, allowed Croatia back, and the penalty shootout was horror. It was a horrific penalty shootout by the Japanese, man. So they have to actually work on that, and come again better, come again next time. But as you said, they would definitely walk away from the tournament feeling like they could have done better,
Yep.
because they had the personnel to do so. But I don't think Moriyasu, got his selection right most of the time. You see what I'm saying? Like, for example, look at this game. Doan should have never started. You know what I'm saying? And you had I just don't it's pretty suspect, man. It's just pretty suspect the way he changed up his tactics from game to game when he should have just stuck to the script.
Yeah. Hopefully, this will be a breakthrough moment for Japan, because this was the first world. Was the first time they made it to a consecutive knockout stage. Remember, they were falling under the every other World Cup kind of pattern.
Yeah.
So maybe we're going to start seeing Japan. This is going to be like a moment we'll look back on maybe a decade from now, if Japan goes on a deep run in the World Cup eventually, which I think they will eventually. That this might be the moment where they really announce themselves on the scene as like,
Yeah. But then again, when you really think about it, if you look back at what they did in 2018, maybe it's not Moriyasu, maybe it's just the DNA of the team itself, because they did the same thing against Belgium and allowed Belgium to come back and win that game that they should have won, and they would have felt like they could have gotten further than they did as well, just from both World Cups.
oh yeah, Japan could have had two quarterfinal appearances back to back.
Exactly.
I think it speaks, moreover, like you said, it goes beyond Moriyasu. It's the development of Japanese football. And the J League in the last 20 years has flying, man. And all these guys, a lot of these Japanese players, they're playing abroad. A lot of them play in the Bundesliga. So, yeah, I mean, Japan is rapidly accelerating in the right direction.
Yep. So with that being said, we're gonna move on to Spain, where Luis Enrique, in his second stint, didn't do too well at the World Cup. I think Spain could have actually done a lot better, and he has been moved on. And the new manager is Luis de la Fuente. I think he was the assistant, right, or the youth manager, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah,
So
he was
yeah,
under 23, under 21.
yeah. So let's just take a quick look at Luis Enrique's, time in charge of Spain, and you could see here, Spain manager. He took charge in 44 games in total across two stints. Previously, he was a manager at Barcelona for a couple years, Celta Vigo, Roma. But in terms of Spain, he tried. He was a bit revolutionary in that he was playing a lot of youth over
Yeah.
the older
Yeah.
statesmen that were there before. Guys like Sergio Ramos notably moved
Yeah.
on. I don't know if that was actually not that I don't know. I don't think that was the right decision. I think Sergio Ramos, still playing at a high level, should have been there with his leadership skills. And then, you could have used Sergio Ramos and Laporte as the center halves, and Rodri could have been in the midfield. Imagine a midfield with Rodri. Busquets is maybe the player that should have been moved on when you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And use Rodri along with Pedri and Gavi in the middle. But Enrique did his thing, did what he had to do, and I think Spain could have done a lot better than they did. They had impressive moments, of course, both at the Euros, Nations League, and at the World Cup. But overall, they didn't win anything throughout that whole tenure. So
No. And I think that I'm going to be a little bit more harsh. I think the only positive thing Luis Enrique did was bringing in the young guys like Gavi and Pedri and Sufati. and I give him a lot of credit for that, trying to shift away from the old guard. But it just did not manifest in tournament success, right? And not just in this World Cup, but I think even when you break down the Euro run to the semis into context, they were a little bit fortunate to get that far. They didn't play very inspiring football Euro 2020, if you remember. They scraped through the group stages. And a big criticism that you and I have of Spain is just the way they play it's stagnant. It's just sticking to the same system, passing the ball around, not really playing proactive football, not risk-taking, and other teams have sussed that out effectively. And this was the second time in a row I think they went out in the round of 16, right?
Because the 2018 too, yeah.
It's a failure. I look at Luis Enrique's time with Spain as a moderate failure, not a big failure, because I think Spain, with the right management and a shift in identity with the players they have, they can be world beaters. But I don't rate his time as manager. I think it is the right move to move on. If they don't have Costa Rica, if they don't lambast Costa Rica in their group, they might not come out of the group stages.
Yeah,
that's the only reason they went through, right? Because they put seven. They put 7 past Costa Rica.
But the thing is, right after they put 7 past Costa Rica, where did that form go? That form went away.
Yes.
They got beaten badly by Morocco as well. They lost back-to-back games. They lost to Japan and Morocco in back-to-back games at the World Cup. 2 teams that they should be beaten when you really think about it.
Absolutely. Spain, everything clicked the right way. This is a team that could have made it to the semis or final. They have it in their capability. You see the thing with Spain is you see the pieces are there. They just don't. It's just this problem with the team's tactical approach. I think their identity. They have not been able to even come close to replicating the type of living up to what they had with that dynasty in the 2010s.
Yeah.
So
I think it has a lot to do with selection as well, because, not picking Real Madrid players, not picking, for example, an impressive striker like a Raul de Tomas, who was coming through really well and not getting the opportunities. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even Morata not starting at times when he was the main striker in the team. These kind of decisions, just playing that one-sided type football where, one trick pony type football where a death by 1,000 passes was pretty, unsuccessful.
Yep.
At one point, so it's like, what I mean? They just have to switch it up a bit, because they're very unpredictable. They're very not unpredictable. They're very predictable, because you come up against Spain, it's going to be just tiki-taka. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And just to transition over, segue to this guy, Luis de la Fuente. I don't know him very well. He's 61 years old. He was, we just scroll down a bit to see his CV. He was in charge of Spain briefly when Luis Enrique was dealing with the situation there, family situation. But he has been the under 21, under 18, under 19, managed Alaves, managed Bilbao for a while, managed Bilbao for about 5 years, and he had a 1.17 points per game. So that's pretty low, if you ask me, for a manager. If you check his Bilbao resume about, 10, 12 years ago, it was poor. He had 22 wins, 30 draws, and 30 losses. That's not good enough. You see what I mean? But he's been around the youth setup for a while, and maybe he's the safest bet right now. You see what I mean?
He could be, especially since we highlighted the fact that the best thing Enrique did was bringing the young guys. You have someone who now is coming through from the youth system, intimately familiar with young players. So
yeah,
maybe this is what Spain needs. We just don't know for now. Time will tell. But
the thing too, this is short term. This is a band-aid. He's 61 years old. How long is he going to be in charge for? What, until the next? This might be the situation with Luis de la Fuente, right? He might be the manager up until, let's say this year. You know what I mean? And the Euros are coming around. When is the Euros? Next year, right?
He'll probably be at the Euros.
Yeah. Okay. He manages at the Euros. Spain fails. What's going to happen to him? He's gone. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
And then they have to go again for the 2026 World Cup with a new manager. So it's like a stop, start. It's like a stuttering kind of, it kind of hinders progress. But if you have this guy in charge and say, okay, this is going to be the man for the next 4 years. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And he in his mind, he'll feel more assured and but I just don't see him lasting until the World Cup. We'll come back and revisit that in the future, though.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, we move on. This is another fun one. And we move on to Germany. Hansi Flick in charge 2021 to present. And I have to say, it looked like it was, what's that famous Christmas song? How does it go? It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. It was getting there until it's like, oh boy, more like Halloween,
like Groundhog Day, like this repeating over.
It's
same
like,
nightmare from 2018.
Yep.
Wow. Quite disappointing. At least in my view, because like from Spain's, I was never sold on Spain the last few years. But with Germany, came through qualification comfortably. They looked like they were in decent form. Nations League, when they was in September, they started showing some chinks in their armor. But I think you had them coming out of the group though, right? Didn't you?
Yeah, I had him coming out of the group.
Me too. I thought they would top the group actually. Man, I mean, what do you?
I was sold. I was sold on Germany after the progress since the last World Cup and everything. Well, basically after Hansi Flick was put in charge, because Joachim Löw should have been sacked after that 2018 World Cup, but they didn't. And when you think about it, who knows? It would have been harsh to sack Flick, but he has the tenure was looking pretty good. You know what I mean? Let's take a look at that really quick and you see. And you see Hansi Flick, this is his tenure so far. Germany started badly against Japan. It was like, oh boy, but they bounced back with a draw and a win against Costa Rica, and it still wasn't good enough to get out of the group. But before then, where Flick had only lost once. So it's mind-boggling. It's puzzling. And that loss came against Hungary. Maybe that was a sign of things to come. The loss against Hungary, the draw against England, barely beating Oman in a warm-up game. So maybe the signs were there. Those 4 draws in a row from March all the way to June there. You see what I'm saying? So maybe the signs were there. Now, in hindsight, this in hindsight is 2020. When we go back in hindsight, right, and we're looking at that, we're looking at 4 draws in a row. A 5-2 win over Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 1-0 loss to Hungary and the 3-3. So right there, in 7 competitive games, Germany only won a single match.
Wow.
You see that? And if you add 3 more competitive games, so in 10 competitive games, Germany won twice. So maybe it wasn't a surprise at all when you really look back at it.
No, maybe not full surprise. They did give the impression at times that this was going to be a grinding process of Flick trying to rebuild this team after the funk. Well, they're still in a funk, but the funk they were in during the last few years of the Yogi Löw years. I think this is a lesson because it just goes to show yet again, club football is drastically different from international. This is the same guy who just a couple of years ago won the Champions League with Bayern Munich. Yep. Here he comes into the national team, not unfamiliar with it either because he was an assistant coach for 8 years under Yogi Löw. But it just goes to show that Germany, for whatever reason, they just in that collective funk, they've not been able to get out of it. And it's concerning because I think of all the big powerhouse nations in international football right now, I think they're under one of the most pressure because the Euros are next year and they're hosting it. If they have a disaster on home soil, I mean, I think he'll make it to Euro 2024. They're not going to change managers a year before. But it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here because they're not going to be playing any qualifying games. So, you know, I don't know. It looks like they're really starved for time to get something going.
What about the Nations League, though? They do have the Nations. When is the next set? The Nations League final is coming up pretty soon, right?
But they're not in it. They're not in the semis.
No, I mean, but the next go around, like the 23-24 cycle.
I don't know if I don't think it starts this year. I think it starts in 2024.
Well, they'll find a way around it. There's a lot of, friendlies. The international breaks are pretty big now where they take big squads and they actually play a lot of matches. So they'll work it out, you know what I mean? So
do you think he deserves to stay on, or you think he should have been sacked?
Yeah, of course. If you look at the record, the man had only lost once before the World Cup. So
I agree.
And then he went to the World Cup and lost one game. So it's just unfortunate that Germany didn't. And as we discussed earlier, Germany only did not go through only because Spain beat Costa Rica so badly.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Or it would have been Spain and Japan going through.
It should be said, though.
It should have been Germany and Japan, pardon me, if Spain didn't win that game so heavily against Costa Rica.
A lot of different permutations. It should be said, though, they looked lacking during some moments in that match against Costa Rica. Germany, they trailed at one point, I think.
They were trailing. Costa Rica were actually going through at one point.
For 3 minutes, yeah.
But the thing is, you got to question the selection as well, because when players like Nicholas Fulkrug was, he was in form, Flick didn't start him. You see what I'm saying? And you come back and you think about it, like the selection was a bit suspect. You see what I mean? So
I think Flick overthought it. I think he was trying to give a lot of primacy to the younger guys. And Fulkrug I think he's 30, right?
He's a bit up there. I don't think he's that old, but he's high. I think higher 20s, might be higher in 20s.
And he had a good performance in the game against Japan, I believe.
Yep.
He should have been starting for the other two games.
Yeah. So Flick would be in charge. He's still in charge of Germany. I don't think Germany are not a country. The federation does not chop and change that often. So I believe Flick would be in charge for the foreseeable future. And if Germany, they have a decent enough Euros on home soil, he would be in charge for the 2026 World Cup. If Germany does qualify, they should qualify because they won't qualify. They basically walked the last qualifiers, and I think they'll do the same. So we gotta move on. Costa Rica, Luis Fernando Suarez. The last time I checked, he was still in charge, and I think deservedly so. Luis Fernando Suarez, the Colombian. He's still in charge, 63 years old these days, and I think it was a very good bounce back by Costa Rica during the qualifiers in CONCACAF, where things weren't looking too good, but Costa Rica, they pulled things back, man. They look good, finished strongly, and they went into the playoffs and they were successful as well.
Yeah, I think he gets a lot of credit. All the 32 managers we're going to cover, this guy gets like a lot of respect from me.
Yeah. After the 7-0, what they did, deserves a lot of respect, man.
They almost shithoused it, man. Can you imagine they had advanced with like a -6 goal differential or something?
Crazy.
But it goes all the way back to qualifying, like you said. Costa Rica, I think it was after the first 6 games, they were on 7 points. They looked dead in qualifiers in the first half of the octagonal. And then they just almost swept the board. Their final 7 matches, they got 19 points, I think it was. And they won all 3 of their last 3 games in March.
Yeah, it's right. Look, it's right there. They had lost to Canada and the USA, right? and those were away matches.
Yep.
Remember those back-to-back games where they came to America and the whole narrative was the team was a bit too old. They went to Canada, they suffered the same fate, and then after that it was a wake-up call. It
Yep.
was a wake-up call. They didn't lose a single match after that.
And
And they
yeah.
only drew once. So,
Yeah.
yep. So he deserves a lot of credit, man.
Also, it
Definitely
shows the
deserves a lot of
pedigree
credit.
of Costa Rica and the CONCACAF region.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, I think that for him doing the patchwork job that he did, getting them over the finish line, it wasn't pretty. They got there, they scraped through the playoff against New Zealand, a match in which they were outplayed by New Zealand too, and for them to rally the way they did after getting humiliated in that 7-0. When they beat Japan, you and I were like, all hands on deck. Who knows what's going to happen now?
Exactly.
And then for 3 bright, shining minutes in that match against Germany, they made us believe. They made us believe for a moment they were going to pull off something special.
Yep. The thing about Costa Rica is they have a lot of quality. That's the thing. If you look at this lineup here against Germany, look at that back line. This is a lot of quality. Navas, Waston, Duarte, Oviedo, Kesha Fuller, Celso Bojes, Yeltsin Tejeda. You see that? Aguilera, Campbell. This is a lot of that's a lot of quality. You see what I'm saying? And you have Brian Ruiz, who was unused in that game. But what I like is the youth that's coming through, and a guy like Jewis and Bennett, who's leading that charge of those youth players. And there's a few more I'm not 100% familiar with, but they give Germany a really good fight in this game. You see what I'm saying? And who could forget that memorable Kesha Fuller goal that he I don't know how it went in, but it went in. It went in. And look, Costa Rica, I have to say, even though they didn't go through to the knockouts, they were, they were quite impressive after that poor opening match, I have to say.
Yeah. I thought they were washed up. I was thinking halfway through qualifiers they wouldn't even make it. Then when they got to the World Cup, I was like, they'll get a point somewhere, but that's it. But if this group was slightly more easier, they might have come through.
Dom. Yeah, they might have. They might have
come through. They might have squeezed another run out. So I think it's fully deserved that he stays on. I'm glad that he stayed on because a lot of the time you see these managers, once a tournament like this is over, they tend to leave, and then it just leaves the door open. Let's see if Costa Rica can build on this and they can bring in that new generation of youngsters, as guys like Venegas and Brian Ruiz are.
Yeah. Do you think he lasts for the 2026 World Cup though? Do you think they keep him on? It's a bit tricky because what if Costa Rica underperforms in the upcoming Gold Cup, the Nations League, early in the qualifiers, but they should be okay though. I think he stays because the qualifiers are going to be a bit easier without Mexico, the USA, and Canada in there. So the qualifiers should be a bit easier, and Costa Rica should be the front runners to take one of those direct spots. So he should be okay though.
Oh yeah, as far as qualifying, CONCACAF outside of the 3 automatic powerhouses, I mean, they get 3 spots and 2 playoff spots.
Yep.
They got it. Yeah, I mean they're gonna be there or thereabouts.
All right, definitely. So that was Group E. We took a little long on Group E. So Group F, we're gonna move to Group F a little bit. We're gonna hit the accelerator. Let's just say that.
Okay.
Let's start Group F. We had Morocco, Croatia, Belgium, and Canada. Let's start with Morocco, and we start with this dude here, Walid Regragui, who, to be honest, before he was appointed Morocco's manager, I had no idea who he was. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure most people didn't.
Same.
And he actually went on to achieve what no African manager, no team from Africa achieved before, was to take an African team to the semifinal of a World Cup, to take part in a third place playoff as well. Give it up to Waleed Regragui, man. Listen, Morocco, I don't know. This guy, the only you see the thing is with these African confederations is hard to really say because they tend to have to have amnesia. You know what I mean? It's like they forget they might I don't know. I don't wanna jump to conclusions right now, but he has to be given a run to the 2026 World, at least during African qualifiers, given a chance. Where Morocco are always one of the favorites to go through, and with more spots available, let's see. Did they drop the African World Cup qualifier format yet?
I don't know, to be honest. I
I
don't know.
think I actually think they dropped it, but we'll save that for another episode, right? We definitely have to discuss that. I think it was dropped, or I might be wrong, but I think he deserves a fair shot. The Afghans coming up. I think he should be given an Afghan and early qualifiers to see what he does. And once Morocco continues to do well, very good defensively, they got goals in them as well. He should be kept. He should be kept on. His contract runs until 2025. So, that doesn't make sense when you think about it, because why would you change managers 1 year before the World Cup? You see?
Mhm.
So he should be getting an extension pretty soon. But man, what he did with Morocco, we know. We don't even need to go deep. They got out the group. They knocked off Spain and Portugal, wasn't able to get past France, but still, the achievement of the group stage was just, unforgettable, man.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, right? This guy's name is going to go up in lights forever, forever. First ever African manager take a team to a World Cup semifinal. First ever African nation. He was only in charge for 3 matches before the World Cup. They brought him in just before, like in August, September, something like that. It's incredible, and I think the only way he doesn't make it to 2026 is, I guess, if they flop in the Africa Cup of Nations, which I have a hard time seeing that. No,
Well,
it's
bro, it's Afghan, bro. Look at what Algeria did. Anything could happen at the Afghan,
sure,
you
yeah.
know. But even
Um,
if they do fail, I don't think they should go ahead and sack him because, the Algerian manager is still in charge, right?
sure, yeah, yeah.
Belmadi.
Belmonte,
He
yeah, Jumbo.
he's exactly. So you should have jumped the gun and just go sacking like crazy, because we see that he's good.
Yeah, I'm saying that's the only situation where I could see them making that decision to do that. But yeah, it's fully deserved. I mean, he's earned it. I mean, no matter what happens, he's going to be seen as a legend in Moroccan and African football lore forever. Um, and I think that Morocco, being individually one of the most talented, stacked African sides, um, the team cohesiveness really got them through, and they were very, very resilient at the back. They didn't relent a single goal from open play, other than the own goal against Canada, until the semifinal against France.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous. When's the last time that I can't remember a World Cup where a team didn't concede a single goal until the semis, not counting own goals? I don't know if that's happened in recent times at
Yeah.
all. I don't think so.
You're really good, man. But the thing is, right? When you look back, look at the tactics right there, right? The section that says tactic. You realize the formation was the same for all the games except the game against France, where he sort of overthink the situation and played and went too defensively with 5 at the back. Remember, he was really defensive from the start of that game, and they conceded very early.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh boy, even with the very defensive setup, Morocco conceded. They haven't conceded a goal so far. And to concede that one so early, that was like a backbreaker right there. Because they didn't really know how to come back from that. You see what I'm saying? Because their game was based on their defensive stability and just shutting out teams and then eventually getting that goal, but they weren't able to do that against France. I just felt like they run out of steam a bit because quite a few players, they were dealing with a lot of injuries, to the captain. Even guys like Sofian Amrabat was pretty banged up,
Yeah,
up until that point. He played, but he was playing in, through a pain barrier and everything. So, look, all praises for Walid Regragui. He's still in charge. And I don't think we need to spend any longer talking about him because we will be talking about him some more in the future. So, next up, we have the Croatian manager Zlatko Dalic, 2017 to present. And I have to say, man, I got to give this guy a whole lot of credit because when he was appointed a manager of Croatia, eyebrows, of course, raised because they're like, who the hell is this guy? And then he did well. He took Croatia to the final of the 2018 World Cup, for God's sake, 1 year into the job. And he was tasked with rebuilding the team after, almost the entire squad from 2018, either retired, injured, or just, was moved on. And he was tasked with rebuilding, and that was the whole, the question mark over whether Croatia could rebuild that brilliant squad from 2018 and transition, you know, very smoothly, and they did it. And the
yeah,
thing is, they qualified for the World Cup directly, didn't go through the playoffs like usual, and they actually made it to another semifinal on the Dalic. So
yeah.
that itself is impressive, man. Self-explanatory.
It is very impressive. Two World Cup semifinals, but finalists, by the way, back to back. We're talking about Morocco, Croatia, same group.
Yeah.
Um, I felt heading into this World Cup, and people can check my channel to see that Croatia owed it to themselves to show that 2018 was not
A
a
fluke.
a fluke, and it was just going to be another generational type thing because they hadn't done anything for 20 years before that. And I'm really glad that they pulled off another, because it shows that this program has some kind of consistency going. And yeah, I saw a lot of positive signs for them in the few months before the World Cup. How well they were performing in the Nations League. They're going to be in the semifinal phase this summer, and yeah, I mean, just like with Regalji, it's well deserved. I could see him returning for a third consecutive World Cup in 2026. He's still a young guy. He's only, I think, in his 50s or so. Um,
56.
he can be there for sure. And Croatia is they're always carrying the Balkans on their back, really. In the modern history of the World Cup, this is a country, despite being only 4 million people, that just always produce a lot of talent, man. And I mean, I love what we saw in this World Cup from guys like Lovren Meyer and Livakovic and Juranovic. Um, and they showed that same grit they had in the 2018 World Cup. Those knockout stage performances, going to extra time, going to penalties. They've really become a tournament team, I feel. And, it's pretty astonishing. A silver and a bronze medal back to back. I don't really have anything else to add to it. I think that I'd like to see him stay on. I'm glad that he's staying on. And they have a chance now, Dom, to win their first ever senior men's trophy if they win the Nations League this year.
That is true. And look, you got to give Dalic a lot of credit. I spoke about the transition, right? And he'll be tasked with yet another transition because there's going to be a few more guys that's going to be moved on. Modric, he might not be there for the next World Cup. You never know. You never know. But I don't think he's going to be there for the next World Cup, right? Let's say Modric, let's say Lovren, let's say Vida, one or two other, squad players does not make it to the next. So he's tasked with bringing through some of these talented players. Maybe a guy like Kramaric won't be there. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of these guys won't be available for 2026. So he's now tasked with another big job of, okay, let's identify the next crop of talented Croatian players first win. See if you could win the Nations League. Focus on getting to the Euros as well. Focus on qualifying for the next World Cup. So, he's been there, done that. And if you look at the recent managers of Croatia here, he's been in charge for 1,971 days. Slaven Bilic actually had a very long time in charge of Croatia, 6 years. And he's closing in on 6 years right now. So, pretty impressive, man.
He's already the most successful Croatian manager of all time.
Well, in charge of in terms of points per game, no, but in terms of achievements,
yes,
he's gotten to back-to-back semifinals, including a final. So he's basically came second and third. You know what I mean? 2 medals at the World Cup. More successful, definitely, man. So gotta give it to him. Definitely gotta give it up to him.
Yeah.
So anyways, man, Zlatko Dalic, let's see what he does for the next cycle. This one's going to be fun, bro. This one's going to be fun. We move on to Belgium. Ugh. Roberto Martinez was in charge for 6 years, 2016 to 2022. And I don't know how he stayed in charge for that long, but I have to say, and I have to say this with no reservations, that it was an absolute failure of a tenure. Failure.
Yeah.
Failure. And I mean that 100,000%. Because no way you have a star-studded team like that, a golden generation of players for all the years that he was in charge. 6 years. He had all these players and didn't win a single trophy.
Yeah.
Best achievement, of course, they got a medal. They got a World Cup medal. They came third, right?
Mm-hmm.
They came third in 2018. That's pretty impressive. But look, the headline: Martinez resigns as Belgium manager as Golden Generation stumble out of World Cup group stage. He went out on a low.
Yep.
Who could have predicted Belgium? Maybe one or two people, right?
Me.
Give you guys credit. Oh, you did? You predicted them to get knocked out of the group stage, huh?
Yep.
Group stage. This is crazy. You think about the last game there against Croatia where the goal was gaping. Even if they had expanded the goal, maybe not. Maybe it would have went in. But maybe they put a few more inches on the goal, right? Still wouldn't score.
Yeah, that was surreal. Lukaku's miss. That was like some Raheem Sterling type shit. I'm sorry. I know you're a city.
Bro, he's not at Man City anymore, bro. You can roast him all you want, but that's crazy.
I didn't want to traumatize you. That's why.
Nah, man. I'm telling you, man.
I have no idea how he missed. I think someone random person from the stands would have scored that. Like,
bro, it's like the ball was like when you take you take two magnets, the opposite sides of the magnets, right? And you just put like and push the magnet. You just push a magnet.
Yeah.
That's basically what the goal and the ball was. It's like you tried to put the ball in the goal and it just kept repelling it. You just kept repelling the ball. So I don't know, bro. I don't know. How did he have such a golden generation and not win even a Nations League?
Yeah, I was gonna say they had 3 Nations League attempts. Adding the Nations League is just like trying to hand out trophies at this point to teams because they're making another competition. They couldn't even win the Nations League. 6 years, you said? That's
6 years, bro.
It's about 5.5 years too long.
6 years, man. 79 matches. A lot of don't get me wrong. A lot of wins, and I think that the team made him look good. The team made him look good, right? They only lost 10 times. Imagine only losing 10 times, scoring 210 goals to 69, losing 10 times, winning 56 times, and not winning anything. Imagine that, bro. That's mediocre and underachieving, if you ask me, with a team like that. De Bruyne, Hazard in his prime, both Hazards. But all the Hazards have dropped off. All of them dropped off. They fell off, I should say. You know, Vertonghen, Company, Alderweireld, Courtois. You have all these players at your disposal, and Lukaku, and you can't win anything.
Yeah, and that's that the story of Belgium's life. The last 6 or 7 years, more than that, because going back to the Mark Wilmot's days, is that they've been very efficient, clinical in qualifiers, beating lesser teams, but they haven't been able to really take any big scalps in international competition. Yeah, remember they beat Brazil in the quarters in 2018. That was an achievement. Lucky to get there because they almost floundered against Japan before that. And then going back to Euro 2016, you lose to Wales in the quarterfinals. You lose to Wales, and then they get third place in the World Cup of 2018. They go out in the quarters again, the Euros in 2020, group stage here, not winning a Nations League. It has to be seen as a failure. It has to be seen as a failure because the expectation from this team is that they were billed as a golden generation that were contenders to go all the way and win something, at least something.
Yep.
And it has to be seen as a failure. And no amount of downplaying it. You remember the last Nations League when Belgium were eliminated by France, and then Courtois in the post match was saying, "Oh, I don't know how you expect more of us. We're a small country." I was like, "You deserve to never play again for saying that."
Yeah, I didn't watch the last Nations League. I was on a break last summer. Yeah, last summer I didn't watch any of the Nations League.
Courtois said that he was trying to downplay the loss when they gave up a 2-0 lead and France won 3-2. We're a small country. I don't know why people expect stuff. I'm like, okay, I understand you're hurt right now, dude, but you flopped. You should have either won this match, and you should be winning a trophy.
Yep.
So Roberto Martinez, it just feels like a waste. Only thing I'm going to say, it feels like a waste between Mark Wilmots, who was a waste himself too, and this guy. The last 10 years of Belgian football has just been, I think, unrealized potential.
Yeah, and as much as I don't want to talk about Roberto Martinez again, we're gonna get back to him. But we're gonna get back to him. But before we get back to him, let's talk about the appointment of Dominico Tedesco, 37-year-old Italian manager, previously, of course, of Red RB Leipzig, right? You see, managed Leipzig, he managed Spartak Moscow, Schalke in the past, Hoffenheim, U Team Stuttgart, So he basically a very young guy, and he worked with the young players for some time until he tried his luck with some big clubs, and he did get some success because he played in the Champions League, managing the Champions League, I have to say. And this appointment was very shocking to me. Like, I wasn't really expecting them to appoint such a young manager, but I have to say he has a lot of ideas. He plays very attractive football, and I think it could suit Belgium's style of play. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But maybe. The thing is, right, as a 37-year-old manager, could he handle these superstars? That's the thing, right? Would the players be too big for him? I know the players shouldn't be not going to be too big for a manager, but think about it, right? Unless he's going to just put his own spin on things, like he's going to maybe not call up certain players anymore, move on some of the older guys, and that's going to be a big call, right? And go with more youth players that he himself could now hone, and he could, basically players he could control. You see what I mean? Like some of the younger defenders, bring them through, some of the younger players. So the younger players would now look up and be like, okay, all right, easy. But then you have the older guys now, like the Courtois and the Kevin De Bruyne and the Carrascos and all these guys who's been around, the Lukaku. How are you going to basically deal with all these personalities at this young age. Listen, I'm 36. The man's 37. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, from my experience, like at work, when you're dealing with guys who's been around for a while, it's pretty tough. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
at work, like lately, I've been, some days I'm like the lead, and I'm the lead even with the more experienced guys than myself. You see what I mean? Like I've been there 10 years. There's been guys that's been there, let's say 20 years, 18 years, and I'm the lead. The way I approach that situation is I just show them just respect and just work with them. But I can't really tell them, hey man, I want you to do this and that. It's kind of weird. And it's kind of, you see what I'm saying? It makes
Of
me
course.
feel like I can't really, fulfill my potential in a way. Like I really can't do exactly what I want to do. You see what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
someone might question my authority.
Sure.
Someone might question my knowledge and what I know. And I think, that might happen. But it's a brave and it's a bold appointment, I have to say.
Well, maybe that's what they need now after what they've had the last decade, really. So, want to move on?
Yeah, but you haven't said anything about you haven't said anything about Tedesco though.
I don't know very much about him, to be honest. When I
And
was
this
researching him, I
I
I,
actually
I found out the same information you did. I'm in the dark about him. I can't say it's a bad
yeah,
hire. It's a good hire.
I've actually known about him for some time because of Champions League and all of that. You know what I mean? But this will be his first international managerial job. That's a bold call, though. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he applied for the job or they called him. So it's a tricky one. Let's see. Let's see how he does, man. Let's definitely see how he does. And to just finish off Group F, Canada, John Herdman. He was actually in the news that he was moving to be the New Zealand manager, right? The New Zealand head coach, where he was actually the head coach of the New Zealand women's team in the past.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's not a bad move for New Zealand because they almost guaranteed a spot at the next World Cup with Oceania getting that direct spot. And with Canada, he's guaranteed a spot as well. But apparently, he's made a U-turn on that decision and stayed on as the Canada's manager.
Yeah. Wise decision, because why would you not want to be a manager of one of the host nations in a tournament that's absolutely going to pop off here when it reaches, and to build upon how impressive they looked in qualifiers, the promise that they showed, if even the inexperience in this World Cup. I don't know why the hell he would go down to Oceania and beat up on Fiji and Vanuatu. I don't see what you get out of that.
Exactly.
With the guaranteed spot, New Zealand's going to qualify no matter who their manager is. So I think Herdman deserves to stay on. I do think the in-game management against Croatia, when they were just thwarted, just thoroughly played off the pitch, was poor. But I like how they set up against Belgium. They were the dominant team in that first match against Belgium. Unlucky to not. I thought they were unlucky to lose.
Yeah, they were. They were.
The match against Morocco, again, you're coming up against a team that's just more tactically disciplined and better coached. You can kind of give Canada a pass because they had 2 World Cup semifinalists in their group. 0 points for them. It's a little bit harsh because you can make the case that they're still a top 2 team in CONCACAF. Maybe they're even still the best team in CONCACAF. So I mean, I think it's a good decision for Herdman to stay. I think Canada will almost certainly benefit from home field advantage in 2026 in some way, shape, or form. And I think that, that's all I have to add for John.
So, first of all, Canada topped the qualifiers in CONCACAF. That itself is impressive, man. He deserves a lot of credit for that. He got a lot. Not that he deserves a lot of credit. He got a lot of credit in the bank for that. You see what I'm saying? And that's Canada. Canada topped the freaking CONCACAF, right? The octagonal. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Qualified for the World Cup for the first time since 1986. Unbelievable achievement. Again, more credit in the bank for him, right? The squad is very, very talented. What, 50 games, in charge now? You have guys like Davies, Jonathan David, Stephen Estacio, Tajon Buchanan. These are immensely talented players, right?
Sure.
I think they do need to find. I know Boyan, he's a decent goalkeeper. I think they do need to move on from Boyan, in my opinion. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
They need to move on. That's just an area. They need to work on some areas of weakness. In CONCACAF region, they held up pretty well, but you saw the chinks, in the armor actually exposed at the World Cup when they met more quality oppositions, right? I think the way Canada played, they didn't manage the games pretty well. They didn't. It was like they were in unfamiliar territory. And if that was CONCACAF, they would have won those games because they would have beat up on the opposition, right? They would have got out the blocks fast. They would have scored a few goals. And, the opponent now would have had to basically try to get a few goals back. And they would have, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's how Canada would have got their advantage there. But when you're coming up against these more quality teams like Belgium, Croatia, Morocco, yeah, you're scoring. There's no problem. You see, Canada don't have a problem scoring, but it's managing the games, right?
Right.
Setting up defensively. The temperament of the players, guys like Kamal Millen, these guys losing their heads, and you see, so the team losing their shape. Boyan making a couple, silly errors, and so it was a good experience for them to work on for the 2026 World Cup and what's between there.
Yeah. Yep.
So Herdman's still in charge of Canada. They should be all right. They have a lot to work with, and let's see how Canada fare in the upcoming tournaments. So we move on to Group G. Doing pretty well, pretty much the same as the last time. We're getting in depth, but I don't mind. I enjoy doing this right about now. I know it's late, but we have two more. We have two more to go through. We have Group G: Brazil, Switzerland, Cameroon, Serbia. No one got the sack, but Tite, who was in charge from 2016 to 2022, he has moved on, and the spot is now vacant for Brazil. So Tite, of course, he's one of these managers that he has a wealth of talent to choose from, and it makes the job. It could be twofold, right? It could make the job easy, or it could make it very difficult. But one thing I have to say, I'm disappointed that Brazil did not even reach a World Cup semifinal during his tenure across the last two tournaments with the type of talent that he had available to him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm shocked. I mean, I really admire Tite. I think that Brazil was playing phenomenal football in the qualifiers, both in 2018 and 2022. And fun fact, he leaves the job never having lost a single qualifying match with Brazil across both cycles. Record points in both cycles, 40-plus points in both cycles. And they couldn't reach the last four in either one of them?
Exactly.
I mean,
mind-boggling.
It's insane because, like, we've seen worse managers with Brazil get to this stage, like Dunga and the second stint that Luis Felipe Scolari was in charge for 2014. He got to the semis. It feels like a spectacular failure. And I think this exit hurts a lot more than the one in 2018, because the 2018 one, you can say, okay, World Cup, European soil, they lost to Belgium. But, I mean, all respect in the world of Croatia and their classes, but Brazil had a run to the semis on a platter for them. I mean, They did show signs in the group stages, if you remember, because they did show a little bit of difficulty breaking teams down. They actually did not score a single goal in the first half in 3 out of 4 games. 3 out of 4 games prior to the Croatia match. So they were very much a second half team. Remember that?
Yeah.
So I think that was an issue for them. Where do you think it really went wrong?
Man, look, Brazil, if you look at these are all the results on the Tite. He only lost about 12 times, 7 losses, pardon me. And during that whole time, in the last few years, he lost twice to Argentina. You see? He lost in 2019. He lost the Copa America final in 2021. And if we go back, they did lose to Belgium at the World Cup. And he lost to Argentina in 2017. So Argentina, inflicted most of the damage there on, Brazil during Tite's tenure. That's just his Achilles heel, Argentina. Yeah. The one loss there at the World Cup, because they only lost once at the World Cup. That loss to Croatia was on penalties, so that doesn't count as a loss, really. That's a draw. Yeah. But that loss to Cameroon was inconsequential for the most part because of a changed team. Yeah. But it's just, I don't blame Tite. I more blame the players, the ill discipline of the players, not knowing when to be flashy and to just handle business. You see what I'm saying? Because that's why this Croatian game went to penalties. If Anthony was a bit more mature and not wanting to dribble and give the ball away, turn over the ball to Croatia, Brazil would have gone on to make the semis, right?
Most likely.
And you would have fancied a Brazil in the semis, who did Croatia beat in the semi? Croatia lost in the semis to
Argentina. We would have had Argentina versus Brazil.
Exactly. And then it would have been time for revenge. And you never knew what could have happened in that game. You see what I'm saying? That would have been the better game in my opinion. But they didn't get to, that game. And if you go back, look, man, it's just an underachieving team under Tite, if you ask me.
It's insane.
As you said, it's a spectacular failure because it's like you wonder how the hell did it happen.
I don't know how 2018's failure happened. This one confuses me even more because Brazilians are still tearing it up in club football. They're still tearing it up. Yep. And these guys can only register one semi-appearance in 20 years. Because
you and I were actually discussing this a few months ago, maybe, when I said Brazil, they have been the most disappointing team in world football, one of the most disappointing teams in world football, with the talent that they have at their disposal, not to win a World Cup in 20 years.
Yeah,
think about it. 20 years, it's a disgrace.
And now, by the time 2026 comes, it's going to be tied for the longest gap they've gone in between winning a World Cup. It'll be at least 24 years. Remember, 1970, 1994. It'll be at least 24 years before they get a chance to win. Neymar's not getting younger.
I don't know if they're winning that World Cup in 2024 either. 2026 either.
I don't know either, man. Because as we're about to get into it, the whole vacancy in their managerial position.
But the last time the World Cup was in North America, they did win it. So
they did
maybe they're gonna come full circle, man. But let us see who's gonna be in charge of Brazil. The spot is vacant. A few names have been thrown around. Carlo Ancelotti was, thrown around. I don't know. Who do you think is gonna get it? Do you think it's gonna be someone local?
I'm glad you asked that because I've been hearing stirs and whispers that for the first time in a long time, Brazil is seriously considering going outside its borders to get a manager because desperate times call for desperate measures. Mm. And Brazilian football has been stuck at this hurdle. And they've been leaning on local Brazilian coaches for so long it might be time to think outside the box. I've heard Luis Enrique being floated around as a name.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going. I don't know.
Me neither. Carlo Ancelotti, though, I'm skeptical. Maybe. I mean, maybe he might want to stick with Real at the end of the season.
Who is this guy? Is this a new appointment or is this guy interim? This Ramon Menezes guy. What's going on here?
Yeah, he's a caretaker. He's a caretaker.
Okay.
That's it. Don't worry. Yeah, he's
a caretaker. He does have a UEFA Pro license, though, you know what I mean? So,
but they're in a similar situation to the U.S. men's team, where they 2-3 months removed from the World Cup, they still haven't come up with a replacement.
Oh yeah, he is the caretaker. He was in charge of the under-20 team, and yeah. So, and I think he's the guy that's in charge of the current under-20 team that was in that, that competition, a South American under-20 competition there. So, if we look at the recent Brazilian managers, you had Dunga, you had Luis Felipe Scolari, you had Mano Menezes, that's another one. Dunga in his first stint there lasted for a while. Carlos Alberto Pereira. You had Mario Zagallo. Well, that says 1 game. That was definitely a second stint. Second or third stint maybe. You had you just go back there in the 90s there. Pereira, he won the World Cup in 94. So they've always went Brazilian. If you go all the way back, early, this Uruguayan guy, but always football pharaoh. So I don't know, bro. In the entire history, they've always gone Brazilian.
Yeah.
It might be Brazilian, but who?
That's a good question. You could see like some coaches that have had domestic success with clubs like Flamengo and Palmeiras and all the those teams in the Brazilian Serie A. But I mean, who knows where the mindset of the federation is right now? Like, we have to start asking the question if in some way is the game moving on from Brazil, because like they're still the most successful team in history, but with each passing time they don't win it, man. They're resting on that laurels.
The thing is, who's gonna be the player that steps up? Because if Neymar's tried 3 times, right? Injured for the 2014 World Cup, like injured again, but in this World Cup. But the thing is, he's been at 3 World Cups and they haven't won any.
Yeah.
So his career for Brazil is looking like a failure, even though it's been a success, right? It's been a success, but it's been a failure at the same time because hasn't won a World Cup.
Only trophy he has with Brazil, fun fact, is the 2013 Confederations Cup, because he wasn't part of that roster that won the Copa America in 2019. I think he was injured that year. Surprise, he's always injured. Man, he doesn't even have a Copa America.
Crazy, man. But anyways, we move on to Cameroon, where the current manager is Rigobert Song. That's the last time I checked. I don't know if they sacked him already, because these African Confederation, they sack you overnight. You know what I mean? You're sleeping, you're in the bed with your wife, and you receive a text that you're sacked. But I have to say, man, Rigobert Song, since he took charge, I think he's done a pretty good job. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna look. The appointment was a surprise because he didn't have like a lot of experience before that in terms of managerial experience. Just gonna bring up his profile really, really quick here. We're not gonna spend a super long time on him because we know, these countries change managers pretty often. But Cameroon, 10 matches in charge, right? Let's actually go back to his CV right there. You see the CV? The CV has like basically not much. Assistant manager for Cameroon. The manager briefly didn't have a game. Under 23, and then not a lot of experience, man, especially in game experience. And he's done pretty okay, if you ask me, with the qualifiers, couple World Cup qualifiers there. and you see the World Cup as well. They did pretty good at the World Cup, if you ask me, without going through to the next round, obviously, but they did pretty good. You know what I mean? So, what are your thoughts on Song?
Um, I think that Cameroon heading into this World Cup looked dead in the water. They looked like among one of the worst teams possibly entering it. I have to give them a lot of props. I think that Cameroon, for the first time in a generation, had a World Cup where they were not humiliated.
And the thing too, right? I never expected Cameroon to qualify for the World Cup. And if you look back at this move to appoint Rigobert Song just before the playoffs, it was a weird move.
Yeah.
Look at that. It was a weird move. And he successfully guided them through the playoffs against Algeria, one of the, if not was the best team in Africa behind Senegal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Impressive, man. Impressive.
They finished third, right, on home soil, with their previous manager.
And talking about the team, but Song in particular, I think he's done a pretty decent job since he was appointed, and that's why he survived a World Cup. He's actually survived the World Cup. So,
yeah, and they end up finishing third in their group with 4 points. It's a respectable finish. They drew with Serbia in a high-scoring thriller. They beat a Brazilian B team, which is still a great achievement because Brazil's stacked, and Brazil played decently in that match. They had opportunities through Martinez and others to win that game. Guys like Vincent Abubakar, who scored that goal at the end, and their goalkeeper at Passe, remember we talked about him before?
Yeah,
they put in a great performance. That Cameroon played that match like their tournament was still well alive, and they had a chance to go through. I think that they did earn some respect from this World Cup, and I think Rigobert Song staying on, yeah, I mean, sure, why not? I mean, you can't consider it a failure of a World Cup if you go out beating Brazil. That's one of the best ways to get eliminated. It almost reminds me of South Korea's elimination 4 years ago against Germany. So, I don't have much to comment on.
And one thing I have to give Cameroon a lot of credit for, right? And one person that deserves a lot of credit is Samuel Eto'o. Samuel Eto'o, he's really shaking up the whole the football federation. A young, president of the federation as well, and you have to give him a lot of credit for going with Song, because the reason why I bring up the history here of the managers, look at these names and look at where they're from. They're all Europeans, right? And if you check any African managers, look at this. Two matches in charge, right? We go back. We scroll up. 1 match in charge. We go up. No match. None. 5 matches. So these guys, 4 matches. So these guys were just temporary, solutions. 2 matches. Sedaf, right? He's not even African, right? He's Dutch and Surinamese. 12 games. Failure. But with Rigobert Song, he's now managed the most games as a Cameroonian born manager since the FA was formed. Look at that. Look, it's right there in front of your face. It's right there.
Yep.
So he's made history, and he's been the first African manager to manage the team at a World Cup, and even survived after the World Cup. So give it up to what Cameroon's doing, revolutionary, I have to say.
Sure.
And I have to say the team's pretty good. The players very determined, and the future looks bright for them. Very inspirational, I have to say. You know what I mean? So well done, Rigobert Song. Serbia, Dragan Stojkovic is actually still in charge. Surprise. I don't know. I don't know how he's still in charge, but I have to say he is a manager that I think deserves to get the sack after that World Cup showing, because it was impressive. Maybe he had credit in the bank for what they did through qualifiers, for qualifying directly to the World Cup ahead of Portugal, right? Maybe he had credit in the bank.
Yeah, I mean, But it's same old, right? It's another day at the office for Serbia. They make it to the World Cup. They even qualify directly most of the time. Oh, dark horse. Then they don't do anything. They get schmucked, right? Um, yeah, he deserves the sack, but it just seems to be a running story for Serbia no matter what. They're just not they're not a tournament team. They're kind of like the anti Croatia in that way. A lot of Serbians are not going to like me saying that, but they just don't have success in major tournaments. And I thought they would finally break through, get past the group stages this time. They ended up doing worse in more or less the same group they were in 4 years ago, and they finished bottom. And I think that they were resilient for about an hour in that match against Brazil. They held them at bay. They shut down Brazil's lanes. They were very, very defensively stout before they were ultimately broken down. Cameroon, that match against Cameroon, they threw that away. If they were going to come through, they needed to win that match. They came from behind, I believe, actually, to take the lead, and they give up a 3-1 lead against Cameroon. It was 3-1, dude, 3-1, and then they come up against a familiar foe, Switzerland, and bad blood because of the Albanian players on their team. That was an exciting match, but they gave up a lead in that game too. They took a 2-1 lead against Switzerland. Remember that? They just have they can't see games through, and despite being a very talented national side, they have a very talented national side. Mitrovic, Milinkovic-Savic, Tadic, but they don't perform in tournaments. Did you know we've had now 2 European championships, expanded 24 teams. They haven't played in any of them. They didn't qualify for either one of the Euros yet. And I think it goes beyond the management. My point with this is, I don't want to get too off topic, but my point is, I think it goes beyond the management. So yeah, I think he doesn't deserve to stay on, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's some real structural problems within the federation for why this program's not having any success.
Yeah, because they were too impressive during qualifiers, not to actually do anything at the World Cup, man. The players didn't show up, and when you look at the roster, it's like one of the most talented Serbian teams they've ever had. You know what I mean? So much firepower, but I've always questioned their defensive backbone, though. When you look at the team, it's like they kind of look a bit wafer thin at the back, and the goalkeeping department as well. So, you really can't blame the manager too much, but it is what it is, man. I never expected Serbia to do well, so
well,
I'm not surprised.
I'm done putting faith in them. I'm done.
So we gotta move on. Stojkovic is still in charge. All right. So last but not least, in Group G, Switzerland, and Murat Yakin, former player who has a twin brother, was actually appointed 2021, and he's still in charge. Switzerland, I think, very, very impressive. I did predict them to do well at the World Cup. They got out the group. They had a formula, but for some reason, Murat Yakin, when he met Portugal, I don't know what he had for breakfast that day, but he just decided to he just decided to switch things up, bro. I don't know. I really can't explain it. And they got lambasted. You know what I'm saying? It's like they had a kid who was handed his World Cup debut, scored a hat-trick. So the rest is history, as they say. Switzerland, I was actually backing Switzerland to get the better of Portugal, but they didn't. But look, to be fair, throughout the group stages, they look very good tactically, well set up, the selection, the defense. I love their defense because, they do have a Man City playing there, Manuel Akanji, but then you have Fabian Schär, you have Nico Elvedi, you have Jan Sommer, who was so impressive at the back. You know what I mean? You have guys like Remo Freuler, Shaqiri, Xhaka, Embolo, Vargas. These guys, Ricardo Rodriguez, very exciting team. And they just completely shot the bed in the round of 16. It's like they forgot how to play.
Yeah.
But credit before you give your piece, because I don't have a lot to say. But credit to Yakin, it was a weird selection to appoint him. Not like he had done anything impressively. I think he was like in a second tier or something. He was managers in a Swiss second tier, I think, right? It wasn't that where
I
they took
believe
him from?
so.
He was basically plucked out of obscurity. It's like a managerial appointment where you have to do some Google research, right? And it's like, okay, but he did pretty good. He did pretty good if you ask me. But that performance against Switzerland, man, against Portugal will definitely live in our memories.
Yeah, I think for Switzerland, one thing you cannot take away from them is that they are a tournament side. This is a third consecutive round of 16. They're used to making knockout stages of World Cups and Euros. Yet again, just like last time around, they gave Brazil a hell of a game. They only conceded late on. I believe it was Richarlison late again with some magic that gave that broke the Swiss resistance. Switzerland they're always at or near the top amongst second tier like European national sides. I think for Murat Yakin, yeah, I can see the argument for him staying on. I think that the tactical lineup, not the management, but the in-game decision making, but the lineup selection and the formation against Portugal was disastrous from the get-go. And it tarnished what was otherwise a decent standard Swiss World Cup run, because you shouldn't be losing 6 goals to bloody 1. Yeah. I don't care. You're playing Portugal. You're playing Brazil again. Like that was embarrassing. And they actually equaled Brazil on points in the group. They actually came 1 goal away. If they scored 1 more goal against Serbia, they actually would have finished top of the group ahead of Brazil on goal difference or something like that. So, I don't have much to comment on like you do. I think that Murat Yakin is most likely going to survive until the Euros again, and his first Euros rather, and we'll see how that goes. But as a manager, he hasn't been a failure, but you can't say that Switzerland has made any new ground with him because they have.
Yeah, he's done okay, because if you go and you analyze some of his results here, right? If you look at the World Cup qualifiers, very good, right? But then you look at the Nations League, he lost the first 3 group stage matches, but then bounced back to win the last 3. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So if we go to this Nations League, I didn't actually watch this edition of the Nations League simply because I was on a break, right? And they because they bounced back so well for those last 3 matches, they survived League A. You see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They survived League A, which he deserves a lot of credit for that.
And they played a big role in preventing Italy from going to the World Cup again.
Exactly. So look, 0-0, and of course the 1-1 draw. So give it up to Switzerland, man, and give it up to Murat Yakin. He's still pretty young in the managerial national head coach job, and even as a manager too. And I did say I think I mentioned he had a twin brother, but it's just a younger brother, I think, by the name of Hakan Yakin, if I'm not mistaken. So look, he'll be in charge. Switzerland is not a team that's gonna set the world on fire, really, but it's just that team that's always there and about that could be a nuisance to the other powerhouses across the world. So with that being said, we wrapped up Group G and we finish it off today. We're gonna land the plane with Group H. So we got Portugal, South Korea, Uruguay, and Ghana. And Portugal, we actually spoke about Fernando Santos, who left the post after 8 years in charge, 2014 to 2022. We went in depth in terms of Fernando Santos. So we don't really need to go in more detail, but I think, it was a rather successful tenure because he won Portugal their first major piece of silverware, and he even won them a Nations League, the inaugural edition of the Nations League. So he won two major pieces of trophies, right?
Yep.
Silverware, which is impressive. And his style of play has been, criticized over the years. He's been too pragmatic, and then when you see he's tried to be more expansive, then it turn around to, blow up in his face at times. But overall, I have to say it's been successful. But could they have done better? Yes. Yes. With the talent that they have at their disposal, yes. And I'm gonna let you say something briefly about him before we talk about their new manager again.
Success. Fernando Santos brought Portugal their first ever major international trophy, the Euros. They got a second one with the Nations League. Easy to criticize for his being way too pragmatic and conservative at times, not getting the best out of Portugal. I think he also was kind of fortunate the fact that the team's talent level progressed after Euro 2016. It got better. It got more in depth, rather. I think that Portugal's run in this World Cup is a success. You would think that on paper they should get past Morocco because that's like you could have had it much worse type situation as far as quarterfinal matchup. But you and I said before that they didn't play poorly in that match. Just Morocco were just tactical masterclasses in that game. So I give Portugal a pass. I think it was time for Santos to leave. I think that his contribution to the team had most likely run its course, give a new look to the next someone new, like next generation of Portuguese managers. He was there for how long? 7-8 years, I think, because he came in for Euro 2016. So, I mean, you could point to the South Korea loss, but they were already through to the next round by that point. So I don't know. I think that I'm fine with him leaving. It was the right move. What about you?
Yeah, they had to move on, man. They had to move on. They needed something fresh, but not Roberto Martinez.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No,
like, not Roberto Martinez. It's like having you learn anything from the Belgium situation. Having you learn anything that this guy's basically stealing for a living, if you ask me. You see what I'm saying? Because he's with these stacked up national teams that it's basically he just pick a team and they go out and do their thing. I don't think Roberto Martinez adds anything to any team right about now. Look, I'm not gonna discount what he did in the back of the day with Wigan or whatever, or whatever he did before. But I'm just saying, with Belgium, pardon me, he should have freaking won something. And let's see if he repeat the same mistakes. Let's see if history repeats itself with Portugal. Agreed. I do not co-sign the appointment. I think it's a poor appointment by Portugal. I think it's a lazy appointment by Portugal, if you ask me. They could have done better. There's better managers in Portugal that could have gotten that job.
It's lazy, and it also makes you wonder why is there just a rehashing of familiar faces? Like, is this all we have to deal with? Why it feels like somebody thinks these men necessarily have to be in a position. Exactly. They have to have a job. Like, there's like some kind of like an entitlement or like this has to happen kind of thing. It's like, no, there's thousands of managers in the world. UEFA is like, the standard is higher than anywhere else. They can get better managers. I don't know what was the appeal to get somebody like Roberto Martinez. I mean, maybe he'll fit in better there than he did at Belgium, but I'm not holding my breath. I think if you're Portuguese, I think I'd rather have 4 more years of Fernando Santos than bring in.
Bro, I'm telling you, no appeal. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Let's move, bro. South Korea, Paulo Bento, he was in charge for 4 years from 2018 to 2022. The job is now, vacant. And we did bring up Roberto Martinez already, right? We did bring up his picture already before, right? When we spoke about Belgium, right? We did. Yeah. All right. So I don't want to disrespect him too much and not bring up his profile or anything, but he's the new manager of Portugal. So Paulo Bento, man, he's a Portuguese, and he could have been given the job, right? He was a manager before.
Yes, he was.
He was a manager before, but maybe you don't want to go back there again. But still, it would have been better to give it to Paulo Bento. You see what I'm saying? It would have made more sense. It would have been like, okay, redeem yourself now. You see what I mean?
Right.
But he was given 4 years from 2010 to 2014. He was at the 2014 World Cup. And let me just go back and, look at that Paulo Bento stint there at the 2014 World Cup. Just briefly, I just want to take a look at that group stage. And that's why he actually got sacked. Group stage, and then he managed one match. Albania defeated Portugal and for the Euro qualifiers, and he got sacked. And
wow.
it was crazy that Portugal went on to win the exact Euros when Fernando Santos was hired. When he got sacked, Fernando Santos got hired, and
wow.
Portugal went on to win the Euros. So that's crazy. But I'm saying it would have been better off giving him the managerial position than freaking Roberto Martinez. I would have been like, yeah. That's a better appointment. Not Roberto Martinez, bro. But Paulo Bento, in charge of South Korea, 57 matches. I'd say it's been a pretty impressive stint. Took them back to the World Cup expectedly, you know what I mean? Because Asia, South Korea, the talent they have at their disposal and everything. And just to keep them competitive, look, you're a foreign manager going into a country like South Korea where the language is a bit difficult, and to, call up the right players to make the team competitive, take them back to a World Cup. They were competitive at the World Cup again, despite not getting very deep in the tournament, but they got out of that group. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They got out of that group, and they did so impressively by I guess he got his revenge on Portugal, right? By beating Portugal in that last game, right?
Yeah, he did. It's kind of funny. You're as a player for Portugal in 2002 with a group with South Korea, and then you managed Portugal some years later. You have failure, and then you coach against your home country with the same team that you played against as a player, and it's just
exactly.
Football is poetic sometimes.
Yep.
I think if he had stayed, I think you could have made a justification for it. South Korea, this was only the third time they ever advanced past the group stages of a World Cup ever, and they did it in very dramatic fashion, as we know, with that last stoppage time winner against Portugal that put them ahead of Uruguay, a goal difference, I think it was. They had a pretty not very inspiring Asian Cup in 2019. Paulo Bento was manager for that. They went out in the quarterfinals, remember, against Qatar, eventual champions.
Whoa.
Yes, indeed. You're looking at that the right way. You are.
Whoa,
you didn't hear about this? You didn't hear about this?
I didn't hear about this 2 days ago.
Yep. I thought you knew.
I was waiting.
I was waiting to get there.
This actually happened yesterday.
Yes, it did.
Yesterday. I didn't know.
I tweeted about it. Yeah.
I was pretty busy yesterday with the snow and all of that, bro.
Can you believe it?
Wow.
Jurgen Klinsmann, former U.S. men's national team manager from 2011 to 2016, is now the coach of South Korea.
Wow. I guess he needed a job.
It's his first job in a while.
Yeah, I guess he needed a job, man.
What do you think?
Wow. This is a twist because I have vacant on my paper right now. Vacant, right?
Nope.
And this is a welcomed twist, I have to say. Klinsmann, I think his tenure for the U.S., I think it was good. And it ended a bit too soon. He managed Germany as well. I think, he has not really lived up to the hype as a manager, if you ask me, for the player that he was. This is a legendary player we're talking about here. We're talking about let's say we're talking about I want to get the right player. Let's say he's big, man. He's
Yes.
big. You see what I'm saying? He's big. And where's his player profile? His player profile will give us more context, right? A former player right here. Let's bring up his player profile. Look, a World Cup winner, former World Cup winner, right? That will give us more context of the type of player he was with Germany,
Sure.
right? And look at that Bundesliga. Look at the goals: 110 goals, 20 assists. Serie A, played in Ligue 1, played in the Premier League as well, played in the UEFA Cup. So the champion. So he had an impressive career. He's a legendary player. But his managerial career,
Yeah.
I have to say, did not
Yeah.
live up to the hype. You see what
Yeah.
I mean?
He's not very fondly looked at by a lot of former Bayern Munich players like Philip Lahm and Per Mertesacker. Remember when he was in charge of Bayern late 2000s? He was sacked after only a few weeks because.
Well, he got 43 games, but the thing is, right, when you look back at his Germany tenure, he was, because of his impressive player career, he was given a German manager. You see that?
Right. And then they went to the semis on home soil in the World Cup, but a lot of people still feel that Yogi Löw was the mastermind behind that. Like, it was the brains behind it. And that's kind of what elevated his Jurgen Klinsmann's national, his management profile was that.
Yeah.
Klinsmann's reputation, and I remember doing a lot of research on him back in the day when he was hired. He's a very good motivator, which he was for the USMNT. He was very good at integrating young players up through the ranks, having a good eye for talent. He gives the impression to most people, myself included, that he'd be a much better technical director than he would be a manager. I think it's a gamble for South Korea. I'm rooting for him because I do respect him and appreciate his time for what he did for U.S. soccer, even though I think as a in-game knowledge management-wise was not the best. I just worry for South Korea because I wonder what the motive behind this was, because it's not like his reputation is unknown.
Yeah, I think it's one of those appointments that, for example, like, it's like all right, you have a movie and you cast, for example, you cast Dwayne The Rock Johnson in the movie. People are gonna go see the movie. See what I'm saying? Because The Rock is in the movie. So it just kind of, gives it that effect. It makes things more attractive. He's a legendary player. All right, he's in charge of South Korea. The players are gonna look up to him, motivated. He's gonna get the respect. He doesn't have to go and do anything to earn no respect or trust from these players, really, because they're gonna know who he is. You see what I'm saying? And I think it's a good appointment. I didn't know about the appointment, but it's a good one, I have to say.
We'll
it's a very
see.
good appointment.
I hope so.
It is, in my opinion. So we move on, and we have Uruguay, Diego Alonso, and he's still in charge. There were talks that he was actually going to get sacked for the failure of the World Cup there, but I think that would have been pretty harsh, though, because they barely, got knocked out, and it was Diego Alonso who saved Uruguay from further embarrassment of not even making it to the World Cup after what the shit show was going on with Oscar Tabarez and his health, and them still keeping him in charge, and at age of 73, 74, and he was really, really in bad shape. And Diego Alonso came in, and it was just uphill from there. So what are your thoughts on the whole situation there?
I respectfully disagree. I would have been fine with him being sacked, and I think the reason for that is, well, here's the thing. his decision making in that match against Ghana was a disaster. When they went up 2-0, he made the substitutions that he made in that game. You remember that, right?
He took off. Did he take off Suarez, right?
He took off no, I think he took off De Esqueta or something like that.
Yeah, I think we'll look at the game right here. I think he did take off Suarez as well. He took Suarez off. He took off. Look, let's go earlier in the game, right? He took off Ascaeta at 80 minutes. Darwin Nunez. He took off Suarez. You see, I was right. He took off Suarez at 66 minutes.
And it says there he took off De Esqueta. I see that, right?
No, that was late. That was late. So that's understandable. You know what I mean?
But the way that Uruguay played
but the thing is, you shouldn't take Suarez off in a game like that. It doesn't matter what. You leave Suarez on the field.
Because Suarez had an assist too.
You know, Suarez was on fire.
He was. And the thing is,
I think Suarez was involved in both the goals, but he didn't get credit for the first one.
Remember? No, sorry. Go ahead.
No. You go.
I was just going to finish by saying, remember when Korea pulled one back, and in real time, it was that game with Portugal. Korea was 1-1. Yeah. Uruguay was 2-0 up against Ghana. Uruguay knew that if Korea scored, they were going to need another one. But I remember very clearly the last 15 minutes of the first half and the entire second half, Uruguay kind of didn't play as proactively, and they were kind of like banking on Korea not getting the full 3 points in the other game. And I feel like they didn't play with the same intensity for the rest of that match after they took the 2-0 because they thought, we just scored twice in quick succession. Ghana's devastated because they didn't convert their penalty, and then we punished them for it. And he, like you said, he took Suarez off, and I just feel like Uruguay got a little bit too comfortable during some moments in that game. And it's like, what are you doing? What are you guys doing? Yeah, and as far as the qualifying goes, I don't give Diego Alonso too much credit because do you remember how after Tabarez was sacked, Uruguay's the last 4 games they had was a pretty easy schedule. They had Venezuela, they had Bolivia, they had Paraguay. Tabarez was sacked because
it's right there, you know.
They
had Paraguay away. They won. Venezuela away.
And then
Peru at home, and Chile away. And they won all their games.
Right.
You know, I don't know, bro. I think, you know, we're not gonna see eye to eye on this one, but I think it was Diego Alonso's hiring. Maybe that new manager bounce.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Maybe it's just a new manager bounce that they had, and they won all 4 games. Remember, they were in a lot of trouble. You see what I'm saying? Up until that point, because if we go back to that table, right? We go back to the table right here. Let's pull up the table, and we'll see exactly what I'm talking about, right? They ended up with 28 points, and they picked up 12 points from their last 4 games, right?
Right.
If they had only picked up less than 8 from that last 4 games, less than 8.
Sure.
Which means they would have won 2 matches and maybe lose one and draw the other. They would have not qualified for the World Cup. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So you got to give him a lot of credit for taking them from where they were to where they ended up. You see? But because that's not easy. The kind of pressure in South America to win your last 4 matches, that's immense. So I think that credit in the bank actually saved him.
It might have saved him, but I don't think he did enough to earn staying.
But what about the players? What about that draw against South Korea? That's what hurt them. I think that's what hurt them the most. Draw against South Korea, losing to Portugal. I thought they would have put up a better fight against Portugal, and they didn't. But he's still in charge, and let's see what he does in the future. We'll see. The last one we have, and to round off this episode and the whole double episode where it took us over 3 hours to break this down. Wow. And that's Ghana Otto Addo, who was in charge for only 2022, and the managerial job was vacant up until the last time I checked. But Chris Houghton was actually the caretaker. He's playing some role in the FA right now, and he was the caretaker the last time I checked for Ghana. And Otto Addo went back to Borussia Dortmund, where he's a scout over there.
Mm-hmm.
So his tenure was not good, in my opinion.
No.
I think it was, one of the worst appointments because he made some really stupid decisions, if you ask me. I think the team had no continuity whatsoever with Otto Addo, and some of the decisions he made at the World Cup, like, for example, I think after they lost the first game, which was a very entertaining game, then the second game, I think his substitutions and his team selections were just pretty daft by taking off Mohamed Kudus when he did. I think after they won that second game, right, against South Korea, so impressively, the next game he chose to drop both fullbacks, right? Let me go to this game. I could remember this clearly. Tariq Lamptey and Mensah, right, were the fullbacks, I think, right? And they made a few mistakes, rightfully, for the two South Korean goals. I could remember. Those guys made the mistakes. And then we go back to the Uruguay game. You check the lineup. Both these guys were dropped.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And how could you drastically change a team going up to such a big match against Uruguay? You play Tariq Lamptey, you leave these guys. How are they going to learn? You see what I mean?
No.
How are they going to learn? Bro, Kudus is the most confident player on the field. The penalty was awarded against Uruguay. You let Kudus take. You don't send up Dada Ayu to take the damn penalty. Kudus takes the penalty, not Ayu. I don't get it. And no wonder why he left the post, because it was a stupid decision to put him in charge in the first place. And it just shows, where the federation is at. I don't think, when they sacked, who was in charge? Was it before? Was it Miller? What was the guy name, man? That was in charge before.
The guy that was in charge when they flopped at the AFCON.
But the thing is, right?
They lost to the Comoros Islands, for God's sake.
Yeah, but the thing, right? I'm running a blank on his name right now, but I think I am. Yeah, Milovan Rajevac, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was only in charge for 8 days, right? 8 games. But the thing is, he was supposed to be the man leading them up to the World Cup, because he was appointed February 22nd. And that's where they went wrong. That's where the thing went wrong for Ghana. Even though Otto Addo went through qualifiers and everything, if we go back here, he took them past Nigeria, right? Mm-hmm. And that's another situation like what happened with Cameroon, where this guy was appointed just before the World Cup qualifiers, and it worked. It worked, but I think it was a Band-Aid kind of appointment, and it should have never continued. It really shouldn't. But let's see who they put in charge, and let's see, how things work out for Ghana, though, because right now it's vacant.
Ghana has a lot of potential, though. I mean, this World Cup, I will say, overall they performed better than I thought they would.
Yeah, same.
Close match against Portugal. Came from behind against Korea. No. They had a 2-goal lead against Korea, and they went out to win the match, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were in the thick of things all the way until the end. They were in with a chance, and who knows if that penalty against Uruguay is converted, man.
Yeah, who knows, man?
They might have gone through. So, yeah, I agree. I think a lot of his substitutions, especially taking Kudus off in that match against Portugal, I think it was. It was after Kudus had a really good spell, where he had a shot that went just wide of net, and he was causing Portugal's back line a lot of problems. And then 5 minutes later, this guy just subs him off. It was a completely tone-deaf decision, because the tempo for Ghana just went down after that. So, I mean, I think, I don't rate the guy as a manager. I think Ghana, though,
He's not a manager.
not anymore.
Yeah, but he was never a manager. He was like he's a scout.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He's a scout. That's what he does.
So we'll see what happens with the Chris Hilton. He's the
Caretaker right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been a good one, man. It's gone on longer than I expected, but we do what we have to do. And for those of you guys who are watching, I hope you really enjoyed this episode 31, World Cup Digest with your boy Dominic Rich and Football Pharaoh. So we're gonna prep for episode 32. We have to discuss what we're gonna talk about. We have internationals coming up in March, so there's a lot to actually talk about. So how you feeling, bro? You ready?
Yeah, I can't wait. We got a lot of international football next month. I'm looking forward to it because we've been dry for it'll be 3 months by the time that comes end of March, right? So we still have another month to go.
Yep,
another month to go.
So definitely, guys. Thanks for tuning in to yet another one. Link to Football Pharaoh's channel will be in the description box, and the same for me. Whenever he posts the video on his channel, catch me over on Twitter, Dominic Rich FC. If you want to reach me for Football Pharaoh, Soccer Pharaoh at Twitter. On Twitter there you could reach him as well. Any closing thoughts before you bounce out of here?
Thanks for having me on yet again. I'm glad we got this part 2 done. I imagine there is still more content to come. If not
plenty.
If not for, are we done with 2022 World Cup now officially?
Well, we'll see. You know what I mean? We got to move on at some point. But
yeah,
as you see this, this last 2 episodes, we're looking to move on. We're looking at the managers, and we're looking to, move on to other things where we might actually discuss the managers of other teams on the periphery, of the last World Cup, and so on and so forth, man. So, but guys, you could see Football Pharaoh is already in the kitchen looking to cook for episode 32.
Stretch my legs.
Until then, I'd like to say thanks for tuning in and peace out. Rich, score hot. Peace.